Good afternoon. My name is Jana Suarez, and I will be the moderator for today's panel discussion. I am a recent founder of a startup company that has just gone through the process of hiring employees, and we had already just created our employee privacy rights. And I understand you all are in the audience today because you are also from startup companies and wanting to outline privacy rights for your employees. So today's panel discussion is about whether or not companies should have the right to look through or request personal information from their employees prior to hiring, and should companies have limits on this policy of requesting and having access to personal information, and should it continue once they are hired. On today's panel, we have Sarah Bodie, who is a Facebook employee. We have Nida Siddiqui, who is a potential employee. We have Nasser Al-Assoumi, who is an employer in human resource management, and we have Adrian Villarreal, who is the CEO of a background check and screening company called HireRight.com. Each panelist will have 45 seconds to answer a question, and I'll be giving the same question to each panelist, and we'll go down the line. And I ask that panelists do not talk over one another or interrupt while another panelist is talking. I would just like the audience to please silence your cell phones now, and to also, if you have any questions, just write them down and hold them till the end. We'll have a question and answer session. And now let's get started with our first question. What is your stance on companies requesting personal information prior to hiring potential employees? We'll start with Sarah.
Hello, my name is Sarah Bodie, and I am for employee privacy rights. I believe companies do not have the right to request personal information prior to hiring someone, and that the business and personal life should be kept separate. In a report by the New York Times, 70% of recruiters and human resource professionals have denied people jobs because of what they found online. And in another report in CBS, I found that 1 in 10 people ages 16 to 34 have been denied jobs for comments and pictures found on social media websites. As jobs are already challenging enough today to find, I believe that someone's personal life activities should not affect their business life.
Thank you. And Nida?
Hi, my name is Nida Siddiqui, and I am for employee privacy rights. I believe companies do not have the right to request personal information from the employees. I believe it is unethical and unprofessional. Also, according to the American Civil Liberties Union and the Constitution of the United States, individuals are guaranteed certain rights, including the First Amendment rights, freedom to speech, equal protection under law, due process, and our right to privacy.
Thank you. Nasser?
Hello everyone, my name is Nasser Al-Assoumi, and I'm against employee privacy rights and feel that companies should request personal information. Employers are responsible to investigate each candidate to ensure he's a good fit for the position. When it comes to your business, you can't afford to make bad decisions. Any bad decision can have a difference between success and failure. According to the US Chamber of Commerce, 33% of small business failure is caused by the employee theft. A background check also verifies if the applicant actually attended the schools listed on the application. On the resume, sorry, and also verifies the past work experience and any career advancement.
Thank you. And Adrian, what are your opinion?
Hello, I'm Adrian Villarreal, and I am against employee privacy rights as it pertains to the hiring and selection process. Requesting personal information for employment opportunity is important. A company is its employees, and when another company buys another company, it's really buying employees. So therefore, especially for a startup company, it's vital that you can trust your employees, as well as their information being correct and not falsified, as well as an review may or may not be detrimentally damaged by an employee through their behavior. According to an article from About.com, $50 to $660 billion is.
Okay, thank you, Adrian. For our second question, what is your opinion on requesting Facebook and other social media site login information during an interview? We'll start with Sarah and again go down the line.
Well, according to a CBS article from last April, a teacher's aide from Michigan did not give her information as it was requested, and she was therefore suspended from her job. And I believe that companies are violating people's personal privacy rights during, whether it's prior to a person being hired or during. I do not believe that they should be monitored. and I believe that it's out of line, and it's not necessary for employers to be watching personal life activity, and that companies are abusing social media websites by using it to monitor their employees.
Thank you. And Nida?
Well, I believe that if a potential employee is in interview and they're asked for personal information such as passwords and usernames, I believe it does not essentially give them a choice between rejecting a job opening or giving somebody access to their own personal information. I believe companies should conduct background checks if they believe they need to do so, but there should be a division between professional life and personal life. According to an article on Verdict.com, Facebook pages and social media pages reveal certain information about individuals, including gender, race, sexual orientation. But what companies are forgetting is that federal law and state law not only prohibit such discriminatory practices, but also protect individuals against this discrimination.
Thank you. Nasser?
I believe it's important to request social media login information during an interview. Employers have the right to investigate the candidates and look at where they stand with regards to the reliability of the application. According to Forbes, Facebook is one of the most visited websites and has over 1 billion users. So this website can serve as a proof point for the kind of individual employers are asking to join their organization.
Thank you. Adrian?
Access to personal information can help a company screen an employee and, in some cases, uncover falsified resumes that they've submitted. According to ADP Screening Solutions, in their investigations, 49% of their resumes they surveyed found that contained falsified information differing from what the individual had and what they gave in, as well as it provides the company a psychological profile of the individual, which can ultimately help them discover if they will hurt the company or not, as well as understand their psyche and if they will fit within the company's values and vision.
Thank you. Our third question for our panelists is, should employees be held accountable for opinions and ideas that are expressed on social media websites that may differ from a company's viewpoint? We'll start with Sarah.
I believe that anyone can post what they wish on their social media websites. It is a source of freedom where they can post their point of view to their selected groups of friends and family, and I believe that it should not be monitored by companies. In a report by IOL News, Ashley Payne, a 24-year-old teacher, posted a picture on her Facebook with an alcoholic beverage, and soon after she received complaints and was given the choice to either resign or be suspended. She did resign, and I believe that everything that she did was legal, and she should not have been punished for that by losing her job.
Thank you. Nida?
I believe if social media posts are interfering in an individual's career and job, that they should take responsibility for their actions. However, according to the American Business Law Journal, employer intrusion threatens an employee's freedom, dignity, and privacy, which in turn leads to discriminatory practices. Also, business research indicates that employer invasiveness leads to higher levels of stress, lower levels of productivity, and an overall degradation in morale and health.
Thank you. Nasser?
An employee's Facebook status or blog post that that talks negatively about the company, or even threatens or harasses other employees in the company, can have a negative picture for the company. Even posts that have nothing to do with work can create troubles for the company. For example, if they post racist comments or racist or violent pictures. Employees should be held responsible for any should be held responsible for anything posted on social media by them, and especially if the company has policies to what to talk about and what should be avoided in the social media network. Employees should also consider that they represent the company they work for.
Thank you. And Adrian?
It's my opinion that they should be held accountable for their actions, and especially if they're negative actions, then those actions made by the employee are lethal to a company because they represent the company. They are the face of the company. If the company looks bad, then it's going to be horrible. As well as, especially in the instance of Justine Seiko, which was a PR executive who was rightfully let go after her racist tweet went viral on Twitter, which said that she was on her way to Africa, hope I don't get AIDS, just kidding, I'm white.
Thank you. Our fourth question for our panelists is, if you're in the audience right now as a member interested as a startup company outlining privacy rights, what would be important considerations that you would want to address? Start with Sarah.
If I were making my own outline for employee privacy rights, I would make it very clear that business and personal life be kept separate. In a CBS article, Facebook reported that they have been having an increase of requests from employers seeking inappropriate access. Therefore, I would make sure that my company does not request such information, like inappropriate information that would violate employee privacy rights. And in conclusion, I believe that companies are out of line by trying to monitor and request personal information. I believe that the social media websites are being abused, and as a Facebook employee, I am for employee privacy rights.
Thank you. Nida, what did you do?
I believe employers should seriously consider shaping company standards similar to those 6 states that have separated themselves from federal law and have prohibited employers from requesting personal information. This in turn would create company policies that would be similar to Assembly Bill number 1844, which prohibits universities and employers from asking for social media passwords and usernames. In conclusion, my stance on the issue is that I am for employee privacy rights.
Thank you. Nasser?
Background checks is the first step for you to protect your company, employees, and assets. They can give you information to make smart decisions. They also help your company mitigate risk for candidate behavior such as criminal activities, frauds and abuse, according to the 2011 Higher Right Employment Report. It's important to investigate a candidate or an employee thoroughly and evaluate the information received from a background check. Therefore, I am against employee privacy rights.
Thank you. Adrian?
Much like Nasira, the thing I cannot stress enough is that companies should initiate background checks and screening. The Trusted Employer site says that by doing these things, you can reduce your turnover costs, you can minimize your fraud in employment, and you can increase your retention rates, as well as make a safer and more secure environment for your employees, as well as avoid costly liability situations. So in summary, my position is that I am against employee privacy rights as it pertains to the hiring process, as well as requesting personal information prior to the hiring is important because it provides certain preventions towards a company, as well as because of embezzlement and fraud and long-term costs.
Thank you. Well, this concludes our preset discussion for our panelists, and I'd like to once again thank our panelists for answering our questions. Like I said, the purpose of this panel discussion was to give the audience insight as startup companies that are in the midst of creating employee privacy rights for their companies, and we hope that our panelists were able to give you some insight on what are important considerations when you hire employees and when you're trying to protect their rights and also the rights of your company. I'd just like to reiterate that on today's panel we had Sarah Bodie, who was for employee privacy rights as a Facebook employee, looking into people's personal life activities through social media, and she spoke about how sometimes social media can be detrimental and people may face job loss. We had Nida Siddiqui, who is also for employee privacy rights in preventing companies from having access to personal information specifically requested by employers, as she mentioned that companies and employees have a legal obligation as outlined in our federal rights. And Nasser Al-Asumi told us that he was against employee privacy rights during employment because employees represent the company that they work for, and it can be detrimental to share confidential company information on social media websites. Adrian Villarreal was also against employee privacy rights during the hiring process, as he explained the importance of knowing personal information as they pertain to employees who are interested in employment opportunity and how this is important for background screening. So I'd just like to thank our panelists again. I'd like to thank the audience for being very attentive listeners, and we will now open up to question and answers that our panelists can ask. Yes?
I have a question for Nida. Does Does and how would freedom of speech play a role in privacy rights?
I'd just like to restate that question so everyone can hear. Nida, does and how would freedom of speech play a role in privacy rights? I'd like to have you answer, and I'd also like Nasser to answer for a differing opinion on this.
Thank you. Yes, as an employee, I believe, as I had stated in my first answer, that as individuals, we're giving certain rights, including our First Amendment rights and the right to privacy, which is essentially protection from government invasion. I believe that if governments are given this law to adhere to and protect their citizens, I believe that companies should oblige to the same policies.
Thank you. Nasser?
Every employee is entitled to his or her own opinion on any matter. However, if it pertains a company they work for, then I strongly encourage that if you are dissatisfied about something in the company, to contact someone within the company to resolve the issue, rather than doing something that might harm you and the company itself. An example would be using social media to angrily write about the company.
Thank you. Are there any other audience questions? Yes.
I have a question for Adrian. How can employees ensure that they have a fair chance at a job interview and maintain job security once hired in light of privacy rights?
Just to restate that question so everyone can hear, how can employees ensure that they have a fair chance at a job interview and maintain job security once hired in light of privacy rights? We'll start with Adrian answering, and then I'll have Sarah have if she has a differing view.
A few pieces of advice that I would give to a candidate is first the basics, which is always be punctual and polite, as well as don't limit, but be smart about what you post online. And once you have the job, be very cautious about what you're posting about the company and personally, as we saw with Niseko. As well as in this age of technology, communication has become far easier, but because of that, we have to watch what we say twice as much.
Thank you. And Sarah, do you have another view?
If I were applying for jobs, I would be sure to apply for companies that go along with my personal values and views for employee privacy rights, and make sure that they are clearly stated, so that there are no things that fall under line that you find once you're hired that you are caught in a situation where you may get in trouble.
Thank you. Well, that concludes today's panel discussion. I'd once again like to thank our panelists for being here today. I'd like to thank the audience for participating in our discussion. I'd also like to remind the audience that our panelists are available at the networking event immediately following this session, and thank you once again.